It all started with a borrowed lawnmower. A small, stupid thing that should have come back with the tank half full and maybe a new scratch on the side, but it didn't, and that's when everything began to feel off. Ted Langley, my next-door neighbor of 6 years, the man who trimmed his hedges every Sunday at 8 a.m. sharp and waved like clockwork at 7:12 a.m. every weekday, vanished one June afternoon, and the only clue he left behind was my dusty and used mower jammed inside a garage wall like someone had panicked mid-hiding. At first, I figured it was a forgetful moment. People get distracted, right? Maybe he had errands, a sudden trip, or a family emergency. But when 3 days passed and his car hadn't moved, blinds still drawn tight, and not even the porch light flickering on at night, I knocked, then called, then left a note. When that didn't work, I looped in the police, expecting to feel silly about it later. Probably just took a trip, the officer said. Happens more than you think. Except it didn't feel like that. Ted wasn't impulsive. He was the kind of guy who sorted his DVDs alphabetically and kept a color-coded calendar on his fridge. So, when his house sat untouched for over a month, and eventually his sister came to file a missing person report, I knew something was wrong. Not just missing wrong. Deliberate wrong. Still, life moved on, like it always does in neighborhoods that prefer polite curiosity over real concern. But then came the day the cleaning crew arrived to prep the house for sale. That's when a worker flagged me down. Said, "Hey, you knew the guy, right? You might want to see this." What he led me to was my own mower. Covered in dust. Jammed between insulation panels and the garage wall. But that wasn't the strangest part. No. The strangest part was the key taped to its handle. Small, silver, marked with the scratched initials, SR. It didn't match any lock I knew, and the moment I held it, my stomach dropped like it recognized something I hadn't yet. I stared at it all night, wondering why someone would go to such lengths to hide something so small and what it was supposed to open. The next morning, I called Ted's sister, Deborah. I didn't expect much, but when I mentioned the initials on the key, SR, she went quiet. "That's strange," she said after a pause. SR was what our dad used to call our old storage room, in Michigan. But that was cleaned out years ago. I asked if Ted had ever mentioned hiding anything or keeping a storage unit, and she just laughed. Ted? He used to panic if his spice rack wasn't alphabetized. Secrets weren't his thing. Except now, I wasn't so sure. That evening, with the cleaning crew's permission, I went back into Ted's house. They were tearing down drywall, boxing up canned food, tossing old extension cords into a trash bin. I wandered into the basement, where Ted kept shelves lined with expired batteries and color-coded bins of screws, and found something strange. In the far back corner, behind a tall metal rack, was a wooden wall panel. Different wood. Older. Almost out of place. I tapped it. Hollow. My hand traced along its edge until I found a tiny metal latch, no bigger than a coin, with a keyhole that was almost too small to notice. I slid the SR key in. It turned. The click echoed louder than I expected, and when I pulled, the panel opened like a secret door from some old novel. Inside was a narrow cavity, just deep enough to hold one object, a metal box. It was the kind of box that didn't look valuable until you noticed the dial lock, the coated latch, and the faint oil and paper smell that clung to the air like something mechanical had been asleep inside for a long time. I didn't touch it. Instead, I called the police again. This time, they didn't brush it off. An officer named Grant showed up, calm and serious, photographed everything, dusted for prints, and said, "We'll open it at the station." "And you said this was behind your lawnmower?" I nodded. Technically. But the look on his face told me he was already thinking what I wasn't ready to say out loud. This wasn't just a man who vanished. This was someone who hid something. Something big. And maybe he wasn't running away at all. Maybe someone else had been trying to find him first. 3 days later, Officer Grant called. His voice was clipped, cautious, like he wasn't sure whether to worry me or reassure me. "I think you should come in," he said. "You're listed in some of the documents." Those words landed like a brick in my chest. I barely knew Ted, polite neighbor chat, the occasional shovel borrowed in winter, nothing more. Why would my name be in anything he left behind? At the station, Grant led me into a back room with fluorescent lights and a folder already waiting on the table. He opened it without a word. The first item was a black and white photo. Of my house. My porch, specifically. I blinked. Is this supposed to be some kind of joke? He shook his head. All taken with the same analog camera. Dated between 2016 and 2019. The next photo showed my driveway. Then the side of my house. Then my backyard. I felt myself leaning back, arms crossed, like I could physically recoil from what I was seeing. Why would Ted? I started, but Grant cut me off. We're not sure this was Ted. He flipped to a hand-drawn map. Train routes, flight paths, pins stuck across the Midwest. None of it made sense. until Grant explained that most of the routes connected to cold cases. People who'd gone missing, vanished from train platforms, highway rest stops, quiet suburban streets. There were notes, too, cryptic ones, handwritten in 2 different styles. One read, "Avoid Toledo, too many eyes." Another, "Watch reactions." But it was the last line that chilled me most. It was written in blue ink, not typed like the rest. "If you're reading this, they found me." That's when I realized I had stepped into something I couldn't unsee. Something way beyond Ted. I left the station with a copy of the map and a dozen questions swirling in my head, but one wouldn't let go. Why was my house being watched? That night, I scrolled through old photos on my phone, looking for something, anything. And 6 months before Ted vanished, I found it. A selfie I'd taken while repainting the porch. In the background, halfway down the street, was a man. Standing, facing my house. Still. Too still. He wasn't walking by. He was watching. I stared at that image for nearly an hour. Zoomed in. Enhanced. Cropped it like a bad detective on a true crime binge, but it didn't help. The man's face was blurred, caught mid-motion, but his posture, too rigid, too deliberate, was unmistakable. He wasn't passing by. He was planted there, like a sentry. I sent the image to Officer Grant. He responded almost instantly, "We're enhancing it." "You're not the only one who's seen him." That last line made my stomach drop. Not the only one. I thought of my neighbors. Janice, who walked her dog at 6 a.m. sharp. The Millers with their triplets and matching bicycles. Had they been watched too? Were we part of something we didn't even know existed? I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle outside sent my pulse racing. So, I did what I probably shouldn't have. I went back to Ted's house. It wasn't exactly trespassing. It was still technically under HOA control, but the place had been locked up since the last crew left, and no one was around. I still had the spare key Ted gave me years ago, back when he asked me to water his ferns during a weekend trip. It worked. The house smelled like dry paint and forgotten cereal. I walked straight to the basement with a flashlight in one hand and a knot in my chest. The hidden panel was already dismantled, but something else caught my eye. Behind a shelf of expired soup cans and rusted tools was a vent. Too low to be normal, too wide to be heating anything. It was sealed with mismatched screws. I unscrewed them with a dime I had in my pocket and reached inside. My fingers brushed plastic. I pulled it out, a notebook wrapped in weathered plastic, sealed like it had been buried in a time capsule. I opened it. My name was on the second page. So were 2 other neighbors. But under Ted's name, written in red ink, one word: neutralized. I dropped the notebook. Stumbled back like I'd touched something burning. What did that mean? Who was neutralized? Why was I listed? I grabbed the notebook and left the house before I lost my nerve. At home, I flipped through the rest. Diagrams, surveillance setups, names. Phrases like SR key distributed, observation base secured, and primary contact compromised. But one note stood out. Just 3 characters and a number. 204B. A door? A locker? A room? Suddenly, I remembered something Ted once said while returning a ladder. "Keep it as long as you need," he said. "I've got one in 204B at the storage place by the old lumber yard." I hadn't thought about it since. But now, my next step was obvious. I needed to see 204B. The storage facility sat on the edge of town, tucked behind a shuttered lumber yard and an old diner with flickering neon that read ETS. Even though I'd never seen a single car parked out front. It was the kind of place you drove past without noticing, unless you were looking for it. I parked behind the building and slipped through a loose chain in the gate, hoping no one would ask why I was sneaking around like a bad extra in a spy movie. The second level was nothing more than a rickety metal staircase leading to a long, narrow corridor lined with roll-up doors. Each unit had a number. I passed 200, 202, and there it was. 204B, padlocked. I pulled out the SR key, just to try. It slid in without resistance. Clicked open like it had been waiting. I took a breath, then rolled the door up. What I saw stopped me cold. Inside was no stack of boxes, no forgotten treadmill or baby crib like every other storage unit I'd ever seen. This was a room. A control room. The air buzzed low and steady. A wall of monitors blinked in the dark, casting a dim blue glow over everything. Cables snaked across the concrete floor, wrapped in duct tape, and labeled in small, neat print. A laptop sat on a central desk, still open, still warm, still on. I stepped inside, half expecting alarms or voices, or maybe the click of a safety from the shadows. But nothing came. Just the flicker of footage playing on 3 screens. The first showed my street. My front door. Me, walking my dog 3 weeks ago. The second showed the park 3 blocks over, kids playing, a jogger in red, someone pushing a stroller. The third showed an overhead shot of our cul-de-sac, the angle too high for any tripod, likely from a tree-mounted camera. I was being watched. We were being watched. And not just recently. There were folders open on the laptop, labeled with initials and dates. One was mine, BW_October 23_18. I clicked it. Inside, video clips, notes on my routine, a scan of my old HOA complaint about Ted's overgrown hedge, even a blurry photo of me unlocking my back door. My lungs felt tight. I clicked another. TL_June01_19. Ted Langley. But his folder was nearly empty. Just one document. One line. Langley discovered node. Attempted extraction failed. Escalated to. And then it cut off. I leaned back, every part of me buzzing. This wasn't just surveillance. This was operation level. Structured. Intentional. And Ted, he didn't disappear. He either ran, or someone made sure he couldn't run again. I closed the laptop like it might explode, heart pounding so hard it felt like I was vibrating. I had to get out, but I didn't leave empty-handed. I copied as much of the laptop's contents as I could onto a flash drive I kept on my keychain, originally meant for PowerPoint presentations and resumes. The irony wasn't lost on me. As I slipped out of 204B and quietly pulled the door down behind me, I felt that strange sense of being watched. Not paranoia, not nerves. Watched. I drove home with one eye on the mirror, half expecting a black SUV or a stranger on a motorcycle to trail me. But no one did. The world was eerily normal. Kids on bikes. Dogs sniffing fire hydrants. Lawn sprinklers flicking on like it was just another evening in suburbia. But I knew better. At home, I plugged in the flash drive. The copied folders opened just fine. And one of them had a name I didn't recognize. JN_NOV12_19. No photos. Just text. Local contact reliable. Gathering sentiment. Will assess for conversion. I had no idea what that meant, but conversion didn't sound comforting. I went back to my own file. There were logs, timestamps of when I left and returned home for months. Even little notes about my behavior. Late again. Looks tired. Changed jogging route. Why? It read like someone's field report on an animal at the zoo. Then I saw it. A red-flagged entry. Approach garage. Proximity breach. Possible awareness. The date matched the day I first noticed the lawnmower was missing. I leaned back in my chair, trying to piece together what I didn't know. Ted had known something. Maybe too much. He'd tracked movement, made connections, even mapped disappearances. But someone found out. Maybe not who exactly, but enough to shut him down. I opened the one video in his folder. Grainy. Ted sitting in what looked like a car. He was sweating, talking into the camera in whispers. If this gets found, I was right. I'm not crazy. SR Box is real. If you find this, don't go to the police. They're not in on it, but they're watched. Watch the house on Delaney. Unit 5. She's the key. Then it cuts out. I played it 3 times. She's the key. Who was she? And what was on Delaney Street? I searched the address. Only one result. 47, Delaney Lane. A duplex. Nothing special. Except the owner listed on the public records was a name I hadn't seen since high school. Jenna North. JN. NOV 12_19. I hadn't spoken to her in years. But someone clearly had. I hadn't thought about Jenna North in over a decade. We weren't close in school, just adjacent. Same homeroom. Same science lab partner once. She was quiet, but sharp. The kind of girl who always looked like she knew something no one else did. I'd lost track of her after graduation, like people do. Moved, married, maybe changed her name. But there she was again, listed as the owner of 47, Delaney Lane. A place Ted had flagged in his final video. And the initials, JN, matched the folder in the surveillance logs. I stared at the screen, trying to decide if this was paranoia or purpose. Ted said she was the key, which meant either she had answers, or she was the reason he disappeared. I drove out there the next morning. Not boldly. I parked a block away and walked the rest, like I was visiting a friend but didn't want to be seen doing it. The duplex looked ordinary. Beige siding. A small porch. Wind chimes tinkling above a worn welcome mat. I knocked once. Nothing. I knocked again softer. Still nothing. I was about to leave when the door opened halfway. Jenna. She looked older, of course, but still had the same alert expression. She squinted at me. Brandon. Her voice held no warmth, just recognition. I wasn't expecting. I didn't let her finish. Can we talk? She hesitated, then opened the door. 10 minutes, she said. Inside, the place was clean, minimal. No photos. No clutter. It looked like a rental showroom, not a home. I sat on the edge of a chair. I found something, I began. Something Ted left behind. She didn't blink. He's gone. You knew him. Briefly. He mentioned you. Said you were important. That made her stiffen. Did he mention the others? What others? She stood and walked to a shelf, pulling down a thin folder. She dropped it in front of me. Inside photos. All surveillance style. All from different cities. People exiting buildings, walking dogs, sitting in diners. Every one of them circled in red ink. On the back of each, a name, a city, a date. I recognized two. One from my own neighborhood. One from the map Grant had shown me. What is this? I asked. We were part of a test, she said. 10 years ago. Ted found the pattern. The same type of people, living similar lives in specific neighborhoods. Watched. Monitored. For behavior, for decisions. We weren't subjects. We were models. Models for what? I asked, though I already felt the chill in the answer. Prediction, she said. They watched us to see how we'd react. To stress, to joy, to grief. We were data points. Ted figured it out. But by then, he was already in their system. I swallowed. And now? She looked toward the window like she could see something through the curtain. Now, we're replacements. Replacements? I echoed. She nodded slowly. When someone breaks pattern, they disappear. And someone else appears in their place. I felt every hair on my neck rise. I hadn't noticed it until that moment, but Ted's house had a new for sale sign on the lawn that hadn't been there yesterday. Jenna's words echoed in my head as I drove back from 47, Delaney Lane. Not all replacements know they've been replaced. I didn't know what disturbed me more, that she believed this conspiracy, or that some part of me was starting to believe it too. I parked at home but didn't go inside right away. I sat in my car, watching my own street with fresh eyes. The same cul-de-sac I'd known for years suddenly looked staged, like a movie set I'd never realized I was part of. Every house too tidy. Every lawn too trimmed. I walked to my porch slowly, hoping for the comfort of the ordinary. But ordinary had left weeks ago, probably with Ted. Inside, I powered up my computer and opened the files I had copied from his hidden folder, the ones Grant hadn't seen. There were folders named by initials, BW, TL, GN, JN. One more, AP. That wasn't mine, wasn't anyone I recognized. I clicked it open. Inside were a few documents, observation notes, timestamped events, and one chilling line, trial terminated. Replace pending. The date was 3 days from now. My heart jumped. That wasn't a note from the past. That was a deadline. I called Jenna. No answer. I tried again. Voicemail. I grabbed my keys. I had to warn her. But when I arrived at 47, Delaney Lane again, everything had changed. The house looked abandoned. Shutters drawn. For sale sign yanked out. No trace she'd ever been there. I knocked anyway. Nothing. I walked the perimeter. The back window was cracked open. I hesitated, then pushed it open wider and climbed in. The house was empty. Completely. No furniture. No pictures. Just a faint outline on the carpet where a rug used to be. I searched every room. Nothing. Except in the kitchen drawer, one item. A small flash drive labeled J-Exit. I pocketed it and left fast. Back home, I plugged it into my laptop. One folder. One video file. I clicked. The screen showed Jenna, seated in a dark room, speaking directly to the camera. If you're watching this, she began, I'm already gone. But not in the way you think. I wasn't taken. I opted out. There's a difference. She exhaled shakily. The program only works if the subjects remain unaware. That was the deal. Keep living. Keep pretending. But I couldn't. Not after what I found. The screen flickered. We're all part of a simulation, not digital. Behavioral. We're being run against predictions. Every reaction, every decision, measured against expected outcomes. If you deviate too far, you get flagged. Like Ted. Like me. Like you. She leaned in. They don't kill you. That's not how it works. They overwrite you. Reset. Swap out. You'll look the same. Sound the same. But you'll be different. Think about it. Haven't you felt it? Those moments you forget where you parked. Or when you meet someone and they swear they've known you longer. That's a glitch. The video glitched itself then, momentarily distorting her face. The only way to survive is to go dark. Remove yourself from the pattern. The video cut off there. I stared at the screen, breath caught. This wasn't paranoia anymore. This was preparation. I'd been marked. 3 days. Maybe less. And if what she said was true, I wasn't just in danger of dying. I was in danger of being replaced by someone who would keep living my life. Only, not me. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw versions of myself I didn't recognize, shaking hands with people I'd never met, laughing at jokes I didn't understand, walking past mirrors and not noticing my reflection was just a little off. I stayed up combing through every shred of evidence I had, trying to find a pattern, a clue, anything that could give me leverage. If this was a program, a simulation like Jenna said, then there had to be an operator, a central node, a command hub. And if there was a command hub, there had to be a vulnerability. Systems always have vulnerabilities. Around 3 a.m., I found it. Buried in a folder labeled Alt, Monarch, on the flash drive Jenna left behind was a spreadsheet. Names, locations, codes. One column labeled Access Author. It listed a name I hadn't seen before, W. Holloway. Another labeled Bridge Node, Live Feed. A timestamp from today. My fingers flew over the keyboard. I searched for W. Holloway. It wasn't a person. It was a business. Or rather, a shell of one. W. Holloway Suite Services, located in a commercial strip downtown I had passed dozens of times without noticing. I remembered the card from the hotel desk in Ted's folder, the one the clerk said might still have records. W. Holloway. It was the only concrete link left. I made my decision. I was going. If I could get to the source, maybe I could stop whatever replacement was coming. Maybe I could prove this wasn't madness. I parked across the street, heart thumping, adrenaline making every shadow twitch. The storefront was plain. A frosted glass door. A buzzer. No sign. I buzzed. The door clicked. No one greeted me. Inside was silent. Just a long hallway, empty reception desk, beige walls that smelled like printer toner and faint citrus cleaner. A monitor on the wall lit up as I passed. Welcome, Brandon Wallace. I froze. The screen flickered and a new message appeared. Node stability test in progress. Please proceed. I walked down the hall, pulse hammering. At the end, a room. Empty chair. Camera facing it. And a voice through a speaker. Please sit. The final phase begins shortly. What phase? I asked aloud. No response. What do you want? The voice returned, softer now. Not what we want. What you chose. The lights dimmed. A new image appeared on the wall, a video. Footage of me, last year, crying in my kitchen. I remembered that night. I just lost my job. The despair. The doubt. The camera had caught it. Another video played. Me getting a package I never opened. Another. Me in the storage unit. Me watching myself. You've already participated, the voice said. Every test, every turn. You've passed the threshold. We don't replace success. I was shaking. Then what do? We recruit. The screen turned black. Then a single line appeared. Offer accepted. Integration begins. I stood up. I never accepted anything. The door behind me clicked shut. Locked. The moment the door clicked behind me, I lunged at it, twisted the knob, slammed my shoulder against the frame, but it held. I was trapped. The room was silent again, except for my breathing, ragged and uneven. Then, softly, another sound emerged. Like paper sliding through a printer. I turned. A thin tray extended from beneath the monitor with a single sheet of paper on it. Typed, sterile font. Monarch Node Integration Protocol, Subject BW, Confirm Full Awareness. Beneath it, 2 boxes, Accept or Decline. I didn't touch it. I never agreed to this, I said aloud. The intercom buzzed softly. Then came a new voice. Not robotic. Gentle. Familiar. Brandon, please don't be alarmed. This is the final validation step. If you do not confirm, the process halts. There are no consequences. Who are you? I demanded. Silence. Then, you already know. My mouth went dry. It sounded like me. My own voice. Played back through some filter. You volunteered years ago. You just don't remember. I backed away from the screen. This isn't happening. It is, my voice said again. You were one of the first. The only one who showed consistent variance. You let us hear. I looked around the room. There were no windows. Just smooth, artificial walls. I felt suddenly, deeply wrong in my own skin. What happens if I decline? Then you forget. And the process starts again. The idea of being erased, of losing my memories, again, terrified me more than anything. This isn't choice, I said. It's coercion. My voice, the one from the speaker, didn't argue. You've already made your choice. We're just asking if you're ready to remember it. I looked down at the form. The paper hadn't moved. Accept or decline. I thought of Ted. Of Jenna. Of the people whose names were circled, erased, rewritten. I thought of myself walking the dog, not knowing cameras were blinking behind trees. I thought of the moment Ted handed me the mower, so ordinary, so precise. I picked up the pen. My hand hovered. I didn't check either box. Instead, I wrote a new word beneath them. Why? The monitor flashed. Request acknowledged. Preparing response. The lights dimmed. A screen lowered from the ceiling. Grainy footage began to play. An interview. Timestamp 2013. A much younger version of me sat in a clinical room, across from a woman in a lab coat. "You understand what this means?" she asked. I nodded. "You agree to have your identity monitored and modeled for future predictive learning?" I nodded again. "You understand that you may not remember this agreement?" Yes. My heart fell into my stomach. I had agreed. I had signed up for this. The memory had been wiped. The screen blinked off. The paper tray sucked the form back in, and the door behind me clicked open. I didn't move. "You may leave," the voice said, "or stay. The choice, now, is real." But I didn't believe them. Not anymore. I walked out. Slowly, one step at a time, half expecting alarms, sirens, guards in lab coats. But there was nothing. Just the same beige hallway, the scent of lemon cleaner, the faint hum of hidden electronics. When I reached the front door, it opened on its own. Outside, everything looked normal. Too normal. The city buzzed with people who didn't know, or pretended not to. I stood on the sidewalk for a long minute, trying to feel something. Relief. Rage. Anything. But I felt numb. Like a character who just realized they weren't the protagonist. Back at home, I checked everything. Emails, texts, my calendar. It was all untouched. Unchanged. Like I had never left. But there was one new thing. A message in my inbox from an unfamiliar address. No reply at monarchsystem.io. The subject line read, "Session complete. Thank you for your participation." The body of the email was a single sentence. "Welcome back. B." Below that, a link. I didn't click it. I forwarded it to Officer Grant. Then I powered down my laptop, pulled the battery, and stashed it in the freezer, an old paranoia trick someone like Ted would have done. That night, I tried to sleep. I couldn't. I kept thinking about the offer. About the footage of myself I didn't remember. About the idea that maybe I wasn't the first version of me to go through this. And if I wasn't the first, maybe I wouldn't be the last. I went outside, sat on my porch under the dull orange glow of the streetlight, and stared at Ted's house across the way. There were lights on inside. But that house had been empty for months. I stood slowly, walked across the street. A shadow moved in the window. I knocked. No answer. I tried the knob. Unlocked. I stepped inside, heart hammering. Everything was identical, as if the house had never been abandoned. Same pictures on the wall. Same furniture. Only one thing had changed. A man stood in the kitchen, back to me, stirring a mug of something. Slowly, he turned. "Hey, neighbor," he said. It was Ted. Exactly the same. No older. No signs of time. "Ted," I whispered. He smiled like nothing had happened. "I heard you were looking for me. You disappeared." "Not exactly," he said, sipping his drink. "I just graduated." I stared, frozen. "Graduated?" "Out of the test group," he said. "You're almost there." My throat went dry. "What do you mean almost?" He set down his cup. "They wanted to see how far you'd go. What you'd figure out. You did better than expected." I shook my head. "This was a test?" "Isn't everything?" he said. "Welcome to the post-trial phase." I backed toward the door. "I didn't ask for this." "Sure you did," Ted said, walking closer. "Just not this version of you." And then he added with a wink, "But you'll remember next time." I ran. I didn't stop running until I reached my house, slammed the door, and locked every bolt like it would actually protect me from something so carefully orchestrated. I paced for an hour, maybe more, until the adrenaline faded and the questions returned like a tide I couldn't hold back. Was that really Ted? Was I still me? Or was I already one of them, just not fully activated yet? The next morning, everything was normal again. Too normal. Ted's house? Back to for sale. No lights. No shadow in the window. Like I'd imagined it all. My emails? Empty. The one from Monarch was gone. Not in trash. Not in archives. Just gone. I searched for it until my hands cramped. Nothing. I even called Officer Grant, just to feel sane. His number? Disconnected. His name didn't even come up in the department directory anymore. That's when I knew. They had erased him. Maybe not killed. Maybe not even moved. Just replaced. Like Jenna said. That night, I sat in front of my mirror, staring at myself, searching for signs of a glitch, a twitch, a lag. I didn't see any. But I didn't trust the reflection either. And then, just as I stood up to turn away, my reflection didn't move. Just for a second. A flicker. I froze. Slowly sat back down. My reflection matched again. Followed me. Perfectly. But I saw it. I know what I saw. That flicker, that split-second pause, wasn't a dream or a hallucination. It was a reminder. I haven't told anyone. Who would believe me? I've started keeping track of time again. Logging every moment, every interaction. Writing notes to myself. not on a computer. In notebooks. Hidden. Sealed. Because now I understand, the replacements don't start with someone new. They start with a version of you. One that behaves just a little better, makes fewer mistakes, asks fewer questions. And the only way to survive is to keep asking. Keep remembering. Keep writing. So if you're reading this, check your mirrors. Check the time. Ask yourself what you did last Tuesday. And if the answer comes too easily, it might not have been you.